I've been thinking so much about representation, the power of it. I think all of us in the arts at this time, that's what we're thinking about. And I was thinking about, just what it must have been like for you getting started. And I want to ask you about your initial inspirations, both in the world of dance and also in terms of the music that you heard and just whatever there was in the world that gave you the idea, that you could be a creative person.
Oh, wow. Well, my mom introduced me to dance. She loved musical theater. She has two older sisters that were able to go to dance school, but by the time it got to her, she was the youngest. My grandparents weren't able to afford the classes, so she was never able to take dance. But she loved dance, and she it introduced me to it. There was nothing like it to me, and it was a way for me to share my voice. And I used to get teased a lot. I have a small voice now. I still have a small voice. But, about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was even smaller than it is now. And so I felt very insecure about speaking in public, participating in class. Like, it just felt like I was being asked to move a mountain. So dance was really a way for me to find my way of self-expression. I grew up in the time where they would air Michael Jackson videos at 8 p.m. and everybody would just, wait to watch them. That was the era that I grew up in. So, I would try to mimic and learn all the dance scenes and all of that stuff.
I mean, it really is what you see around you, and I was remembering growing up in San Francisco, the Alvin Ailey Company would come to town every year. And I think my mom took us every year. And back then, so they performed in the Opera House in San Francisco. Back then, that's also where the symphony performed. That was kind of the only, major venue. So I was in that space all the time for concerts and opera and ballet. And everybody on that stage was mostly white. So I just remember sitting in that, red velvet seat and seeing all these Black dancers on the stage and what that meant for me as a my little musician self who was totally navigating this world that did not have any reflection of me. I hadn't realized until I started thinking about our talk, how deep those memories are. I wanted to know from you how that, what your interface was with, for example, with the Ailey Company when you were young, how you came to your mission and vision about that expression in your own work.
Yeah, I went to the Ailey School when I was a student in high school. So that was amazing to see Black dancers, Black female dancers. And that was the first time that I understood it was something that I could do as a career. Because when I was younger, it was teacher, lawyer, doctor, and I wanted to be a dancer. And so when I went to LaGuardia High School, which is also known as the Fame School, and then I went to Ailey School, I realized that, wow, I can travel and do all of this and get paid for it and do what I love. Whoa, okay, this is what I want to do. There were two very specific moments where I felt that I was seeing my possibilities, and it was once when I was in college. I saw a piece by Kevin Ayega Jeff, and it was called Surrender. And I was just floored. I just saw these beautiful Black women with strong bodies, and they were just so confident, and they were just like goddesses to me. And I thought, wow, that's possible. I can do all things.
Well, I see you as this fierce mentor and, grower of the next generation. And it feels so urgent to me. Maybe because when we look back, we see these few moments that meant so much. And so you just want to create like a lifetime of those moments for the next generation.
Well, I always say that I got here by way of rejection. I've heard so many no's as opposed to the yeses. When I first started dancing, when I told you about Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson and the musicals and stuff, it was about the love. And then as I got older and started going to school, it became a little less about the love and more about what ideal body I was or was not. And there were some teachers that did teach to my body and did acknowledge that I was in the room. But there were other teachers where I felt invisible every day being in their rooms.
And what you said, too, about, being here because of the rejection. And I think we're all sort of proud of those battle scars, right? They made us strong. They made us creative. They made us brilliant. Also, we would be healthier without them,
That's the thing that's so powerful is that we have to make sure that we don't allow people to place value on our work before we do. Sometimes you don't get a chance to sit and go, well, do I like it? What aspects of this work that I created do I feel good about? And do I believe in it? And I can stand behind?
Do you remember the first time that you had that feeling of control and power and, self-direction?
When I knew, I don't know if this was the first time, but it was one of the moments when I knew that I wanted to delve into the work of the African diaspora, but also knowing that it was going against whatever the hierarchy is of the ballet and modern tradition. That's when I knew that, okay, Camille, everyone's not going to get this. Everyone, sadly, is not going to value this, but you have to believe in this. And I have to do that every time because there is still a hierarchy. You have to have that conviction and you have to hold on to it and believe in it.
Yeah. I think that specifically classical music and dance have that very much in common. There's this sea of a tradition, that is specifically one thing. And so everything else has been seen as isolated. And I think we're only just now maybe equalizing that a little bit, just looking at more of a blended, full tradition.
Yeah, it definitely feels like other cultures are being lifted up more and they're not seen as secondary. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do, but I do feel like there is some shifting, which is it's good. It's time.
Yeah, well, if you talk about sacred spaces, the Metropolitan Opera is certainly one of them. And change there means change at the highest level. Tell me about the opera, about Fire Shut Up in My Bones, and your role as the first Black director at the Met.
Fire Shut Up in My Bones is an opera composed by Terence Blanchard, and it is about the life of Charles Blow. I am co-directing it with James Robinson, and that does mean that I am the first Black director at the Met. A couple of years ago, I was the choreographer for Porgy and Bess at the Metropolitan Opera. The Metropolitan Opera stage was also a stage where at one point Black people weren't allowed to be on the stage. And so what was exciting was to see over 90 Black people on a stage in Porgy and Bess sharing their truth. And the hard part about Porgy and Bess was that it was a Black story written by white men. And so how do I, as a Black woman, navigate that space? This time, the beautiful thing about it is that it's written by a Black man. It's for us, by us, which is a beautiful thing. And I'm excited to show that authenticity again and to invite people into the world.
Your doing of this is change in itself.
And that's the change that I want to see, where it doesn't have to take a Black girl years and years to know that. Right out the gate, if she wants to create and she wants to choreograph, I want the change to be her knowing that that is possible.
Being here doing the work, but also keeping your eye out and your hand out, so that you're always inviting someone else in. You're inviting, a future you into that possibility.
Thank you. Well, it's never just about you. It's always, it is about you and your walk and your path, but it's about those that have come before you, those that are standing with you, and then those that are coming after you. And that's a lot to carry sometimes, to think about all of these things. It's a lot to carry, but it's also a responsibility.
Yeah. And hopefully it's a joyful thing too. And the moments when we give ourselves a moment, to just breathe and look around.
We have to find the joy. And I think in order for us to keep going, we have to return to why we do it. And that's the joy and that's the love. So I always have to tap into that.
Yeah. Yeah.